here we go. All right, so just a little bit of background. So I'm Pauline Mert, and this is Irene Ortega. And this is our math area in our Montessori classroom at Sophia Montessori Academy. And we opened 3 years ago next Friday. So that's really exciting for us to have that anniversary coming up. Irene and I have been longtime friends. We met swing dancing and figured out we both love Montessori. And then some years later, we're like, hey, what if we started our school? What would be our dream school? What would be all the things we want? And then later on, we started a consulting business which we called Inspire Montessori, and we would do in-home consultations, and we did I was going to say webinars, but no, it was in person.
Yeah, those were the days when
talks.
We actually lectured.
It was amazing. And just talked about Montessori philosophy, and we had different talks for different aspects. And then little by little, it kind of just happened that we were able to get started. So the plan was to start in fall 2017. Yep. Construction took some time, and we learned to be flexible and very, very patient, as did all the families who were waiting for us to open our doors. And then we opened on February 12th, 2018. So here we are. So today I want to share a little bit about who Maria Montessori was and kind of what the core aspects of what make up the Montessori philosophy and approach to education. So she was the first modern female doctor in Italy in the late 1800s, and she was a strong Italian woman. Yeah. She knew what she wanted.
You'd have to be in those days, I think.
Yeah.
To be a doctor.
Well, and she had to get permission from the Pope to be able to study medicine, as it was not done at the time for women to do that. And she persevered through some pretty tough stuff. She, for example, had to, this story would have made me quit so fast, but she had to study the bodies in the morgue for her medical studies by herself at night, because she couldn't do it with the male students. So, wow, she kept going after that. Not for me. And then little by little, she started working with young children, and she really started to just be fascinated by how children learn. And she had the opportunity to work with children who at the time were called idiots, which is a very hard word for us to hear. So those were children with special needs or just learning differences. And she started to give them hands-on materials, and she studied them, and she looked at what their needs were. And little by little, she saw that they were capable of so much more than anyone thought they could be. They were playing with the crumbs under the tables because they had nothing. And through those observations, she started creating what we now know to be the Montessori method. And the children in her care did just as well as children in regular education. So she thought, well, if that's working for these children with those special needs, I bet it works for every child. So then she opened her first Montessori school, the Casa dei Bambini, in 1907 on the Feast of the Epiphany. Yeah. So it was just the start of something really great. Within just a few years, there were kings and queens coming to visit and see what this was all about. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this is all about. I do want to read a quote that to me just really outlines everything that Montessori did and what Montessori is now. She says, "It is not that I invented what is called the Montessori method. I have studied the child. I have taken what the child has given me and expressed it. And that is what is called the Montessori method." That just speaks so deeply to what Montessori is all about. It's really about the child, and taking on that aspect of observation. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add? Or
no, that's actually a really great foundation, and I'm so glad you sort of put it in context of her life.
Yeah.
That, it's not so much the materials, although there are Montessori materials that she designed. It's also about her understanding of human development And that's really what the Montessori approach is. We've had this conversation, and we should do a
All the time.
podcast on it. Like, is Montessori the materials?
People have heard us now.
Yeah, we're talking about doing that. Is Montessori about the materials, or is it about the approach, the understanding of human development? Could you have a Montessori classroom in sub-Saharan Africa where there are no materials? You just have sand and water.
Well, hopefully a few more
In a
things,
way,
but
you can. I think you can.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's.
Do you remember, I always forget, but what was the name that Montessori wanted to call her method? Because she did not want her name attached to it. She didn't want it to be called the Montessori method. People had to persuade her, but
Her first book was entitled, and I think I've got this, but I could be wrong. Her first book was The Scientific Investigation of Anthropologic Pedagogy.
yeah,
That's,
Montessori method's easier.
Yeah, Montessori method is how it got published in the United States, and it just kind of went from there.
Wonderful. So I wanted to talk about just some core discoveries that are pretty unique to Montessori and that have actually shaped a lot of the modern approach to early childhood education. So one of them is the planes of development. And she saw that human development goes through certain stages. And all of us can guess at that. But then she really detailed it out. So the first plane of development is for children ages birth and pre-birth, and in the womb, to age 6. And then you have, so that's the first plane of development. And then you have from age 6 to 12, that's the second plane, 12 to 18, that's the third plane, and then 18 to 24, which is the fourth and final plane. And each plane has its specific need, its specific goal. And for example, birth to age 3 is all about independence. So if you have young children or have had young children, you will know that children want to do it themselves. And it might be very hard to get out the door if you're trying to put on their shoes when they're like, I want to do it myself. So one of the key things you'll hear within the Montessori world is help me to do it myself, teach me to do it myself, because that is such a strong need and desire that the children in the first plane have. She also highlights sensitive periods, particularly in the first plane of development, but there are some as well in the second plane. But before we move to those, the second plane of development focuses a lot more on intellectual independence. The third plane of development focuses on social independence. And then the fourth plane, not the fifth, sorry, the fourth plane, my goodness, focuses on spiritual independence. So within each of these goals of independence, there is, there's just a lot that goes with each of those. Do you have any thoughts you want to speak on that?
I love that, Pauline. I love how Montessori can break these things down. But the goal of for each person is to become a fully functioning member of society. But the human person, the human mind, is developed in such a profound way to bring about each aspect that God has made these times special for these aspects of our human personality and our independence. And we say independence because it's kind of the most important thing, don't you think?
It's definitely one of them.
We have to learn.
You're skipping ahead, girl.
Because it's so interconnected.
Yeah. It really is. It really is.
Well, I'm going to let you lead because you're a fearless leader.
Right back at you. Should make me blush. So another big part is within the birth to 6 is there are 2 parts to it. So you have the first part, which would be birth to 3, which is more of what we call the unconscious stage of that plane of development. And that area really speaks to how children will act out of impulse. It's this urge to learn, to act, to grow. And it might not be fully thought through. Think of a young child in their high chair, just dropping food or tossing it, things like that. They're not thinking about how gravity is going to work, but they're experimenting. They're acting out of their will. The 3 to 6 year olds become what we call conscious. So they're fully aware of the choices that they're making, and they're starting to really understand the relationship between their choices and their environment, as well as the people in their lives. So people are like, oh, 2 is so hard. And actually, often you'll see that 3 can be more, I don't like to say hard, but more challenging in the sense that the child is going to push back more and in a more intellectual way, so to speak, of just, no, I'm my own person and this is the choice I want to make. And it's really fascinating. I just love seeing 3-year-olds developing their will and becoming more conscious of what they have and their abilities. So just a little something. And then also for that first plane of development, birth to 6, Maria Montessori highlights the sensitive periods. So those are moments when children are particularly sensitive to something. For example, small objects. That one's such an easy one to illustrate. We've all seen young babies or young toddlers finding the smallest speck on a carpet. And that's just something that they have a need for that. And it's universal. And Montessori really saw that, which is really cool. It's just how humans develop. Another one would be language. Of children are able to learn language, which is actually kind of mind-blowing from just being around language and interacting with others. A child who it does not have language in their life. I love the story of the wild boy of Aveyron. It's in France in the 1800s, 17. I forget, I'll double check. But how he was not around language. He was raised by wolves and was found when he was about 8 or 9. And he was able to learn to speak a little bit and to communicate, but never to the full extent because he missed that sensitive period. Other sensitive periods would be for math, for grace and courtesy, how to be in a community and things like that. I don't want to spend too much time on that because I want to make sure that we have time for your questions and for you to communicate with each other as well and give your tips. And another big discovery for Montessori was the absorbent mind and how, kind of like what we're talking about through those sensitive periods, they just absorb knowledge. They'll take in everything, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the true, the not so great, the indifferent, and how just their mind is so powerful. My favorite story is how if our minds was as busy, we'll say, as a young child, like a 1-year-old, our bodies could not sustain it. We would literally die because there's so much happening. That's why they need to eat. That's why they need to sleep so much, because there's just so much going on in the brain development. So, and then, so another discovery for Montessori was really just figuring out those universal needs of the child. And some of the core principles that came from her discoveries are the importance of the environment. So a Montessori classroom is very ordered. Everything has a place. Because she saw that children had a need for order, a sensitive period for it. They need to know where things are, when things happen, and they're very particular about it. And then, so you have a lot of order, you have a lot of beauty, a lot of natural things, a lot of hands-on materials. She saw the need for the child from birth to 6 to really be grounded in reality. They want to know about what's real, because to them, everything they see, everything they hear is reality. They're not able to think abstractly yet and discern what is real and what is fantasy or make-believe. So you'll see lots of books about animals, lots of books about rocks and volcanoes, and and just people around the world and these kinds of things that just really speaks to their soul. And the materials are just beautiful and hands-on. For example, behind me, we've got the 1,000 cube. And
do you want me to get one?
Sure.
I'll go get it.
And it's, so everything we do with the 3 to 6-year-old child is guiding them towards abstraction. So for example, at first, they'll learn that this is 1,000 because there's 1,000 beads. And because they need to feel it, they need to touch it, they need to see the difference between 1,000 and 1 unit, right? But to them, that's so deep, and that just creates such a deep understanding. But as they get older and as they work with the materials, they're able to think abstractly and just see the card of 1,000 and understand, or the written number of 1,000 and understand how big it is, without having to see the concreteness. So, just a little bit of on the environment, just beauty also is just so important. Lots of plants. It's very fun. And the children are in charge and they're better at it than I am. So it's a good thing. Montessori also really saw the children's need for concentration. So concentration is something that's protected in the classroom. It's where everything comes from. It's where all knowledge comes from. Their ability to concentrate is what's going to guide them to learning, because I can bring the materials to them, I can show them the materials, but I can't force their mind to learn it. I have to trust in the sensitive periods and in the absorbent mind, and they're acting with the material, and that's what's going to really bring that about. And it's pretty incredible. So in the classroom, if a child is concentrating, my job is to back away, to not interrupt them, except if it's something dangerous or if it's destructive to the material or anything like that, of course. And that's where the role of the teacher, as well as the role of the parent, is really to observe, to take that step back and just see what's going on, which is what Montessori did. That's how she came to see the universal needs of the child. And a few other things would be freedom, independence, and discipline. You can't have one without the others. And how it's so incredibly beautiful. And again, I'm speaking about the classroom, but we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about at home, what that looks like. But you have the children come in and they are free to make choices, because again, the 3 to 6 year olds are working on building that control and that will, right? Now they're conscious of their will. They're conscious of this urge they have to learn and grow. So they need to make choices to be able to refine that ability. And so they're free to make choices, but they also but that doesn't mean they can do whatever they want. So we have a structure through what we call grace and courtesy. We learn how to roll a rug, how to push in a chair. If I'm giving a lesson, the children learn to put their hands on my shoulder, to wait for their turn and things like that. So there's a lot of structure to having freedom and having it responsibly and within boundaries that are good for everyone involved. And you can, through that freedom, they build up their independence. They start to be able to do things for themselves. We have lots of materials that prepare them to prepare their own snack, or to zip their own zipper, or do their own buttons, or water a plant, and all of these things, because that's what they're so thirsty for in that plane of development. And then, of course, discipline. With Montessori, we don't do rewards or punishments, but we work to guide the children toward self-discipline, because that's something that lasts forever. And that's accomplished because they have freedom, because they have independence, because they're able to make choices. And it takes time, but little by little, they really start to achieve this beautiful self-discipline, and we're there to guide them along the way. So, and of course, observation, the role of the teacher, and again, the role of the parent is really to observe, to see what's going on. If a child is having a really hard day, is it because they skipped breakfast? They didn't get a lot of sleep. There's a move coming. There's a new baby coming. It's not just a child who's acting up. There's always a reason and something else going on behind it. Maria Montessori just speaks beautifully on that. I could talk about it for a long time. So I'm going to move on for now to talk a little bit more about parents. So in a classroom, and in a home, those are two very different things. There's a love, and there is beauty, and there's care. But in your home, you should not have the Montessori materials like this. That would be very problematic and not possible for most people. It makes sense when you have 25 children in the same space to have that. But parents are and always will be the primary educators, and that's such an incredible and beautiful role. Something I've heard people say, Father Michael O'Loughlin, for example, from the podcast Catholic Stuff You Should Know, he always talks about how his mom, before he was born, consecrated him entrusted him to the Theotokos, to the Virgin Mary, and how it's actually very visible throughout his whole life to see how well Mary has protected him and taken care of him. And I just find that's just so deeply beautiful to entrust our children to the Lord. So being able to do that. And then taking on the role also of scientists and observers, making sure you're able to take that step back. And I think another big thing is being able to have consistency. I think that's key in the Montessori classroom, but that's key at home as well. So in your home, what does it look like to be Montessori, to have those Montessori principles? I think a big part of it would be just in your environment, how are things accessible for your child to do independently? And that might be just having a little step stool that they can carry around in the kitchen to get their own snack, or having a little basket with cloth so they can clean up their own spills, and just finding those ways like, wow, this is really challenging for my child, right? If you're observing and taking that step back, what can I do to make it different? Those kinds of things. So that's my spiel. And don't forget, like, it's also, so the environment is a good part of it. Having a village, we're not made to be islands, and that's true for any part of life, right? And as parents, there's such a need for just having that community and other parents to be there for you. And we're always happy to be there for you. At the moment, none of us have children. Well, Irene and I, Miss Erica does. So we're learning a lot from her, which is actually really exciting. But as I'm not a mom, there are many things that I might not know about. Or I might be able to give you some ideas of what I've seen work in the classroom. But again, the two can be very different. Anything that I may have forgotten?
No, I think you covered it. But then I think the proof is in the pudding. So it's your questions and your thoughts that really can bring about, like, if we miss something, let us know. And what are your questions?
Yeah, so go ahead if you have any questions you want to, put in the chat. Ooh, I love that. So what does self-discipline look like? And man, it's a whole journey. It's a whole process. But let's look at like the ideal of what self-discipline looks like. Self-discipline looks like let's say a 4-year-old comes to school and they walk in, they put all their things away, and they walk into the classroom. They look around, they're going to make a choice of a lesson or a work. And then they might see a friend do something that is distracting to them. And there's two choices, right? They could just, let's say I'm the 4-year-old and I'm doing my work, and Miss Irene comes by and
I start touching.
And she starts touching. So if I am not self-disciplined, if I don't have an understanding of who I am in my body, I might just push her away. And I might just like, yell at her. Like that's more of that unconscious stage of like the impulse of like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. But a self-disciplined child will be able to take a breath and say, you may not touch my work, or please ask me, or I can show you a lesson later. But again, that doesn't just happen like that. It's not magic. It takes time. It takes experience. It takes practicing those grace and courtesy lessons together of what do you do what do you do if someone disrupts your work? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about it? So with our grace and courtesy lessons, we'll interact kind of like this, right? Role playing, but when it's not a big deal. So at a time where it's not within the context, right. Just to give them the tools and the practice.
Yeah, it's almost the Salesian approach to teaching, where you give the person the tools they need before they need it.
Exactly.
So when they get to that moment, they know to say, excuse me, please, or they know to say, please don't touch my work. And the other person has already practiced hearing those words and responding to them just in role play. And usually these are the first few weeks of school here. Mm-hmm. And it's the teachers have already worked out what we're doing day by day, and we just follow Pauline's lead.
Or whichever teacher.
I think another example that I remember from my childhood, my mom was not Montessori trained, but she was very familiar with the concepts. And she had a hard time with, I'm the second of 9, so she had a hard time with us sometimes walking into church. What do we do? Like, there's so much to look at, friends to see. So she set up the living room one day with some chairs, just our chairs from the dining room table, and we practiced how to walk into church. We open the door, we make room for the next person, you keep going in, you put your fingers, not your whole hand, in the holy water font. Jesus is on the altar, so you pay attention to him, you never look behind you. And so we went through this little role play, and it was so much fun. But the idea is trying to illustrate what is self-discipline. The child's been given the tools of what to do in a certain circumstance, or just life circumstance. Please don't touch my work. How do I walk into a church? And it just gives the information and the confidence that's needed for a child to operate in this situation. So another example might be how to introduce myself to someone, like visitors. Well, we don't have visitors in the classroom this year, but hi, my name is Betty. What's your name? Welcome to our school.
Like I think that answers that question. How can we as parents teach a child self-discipline in the home? So I think grace and courtesy lessons and role playing is huge in that, and also kind of giving them those consistent and firm boundaries is also very important. And again, you can work on teaching that a lot through through those grace and courtesy lessons and through role playing and interacting. But for example, I love your example of the church. That's exactly the way to go. When you're getting ready, it's not the time to teach how to. You want to do it before. If you guys have specific examples of where you would like to see more, self-discipline from your child, actually another good example would be getting dressed. So for a child getting dressed, when they're starting to learn that self-discipline, you don't want to say, here are all your clothes, what do you want to wear? Right? You want to build up on that. You want to offer smaller bites, so to speak, and just to build up their ability to choose, and through those choices to build up independence, which can lead to self-discipline. So you might say, today you can wear the blue shirt or the red shirt. Which shirt would you like to wear? Because then there's still that choice. But no matter what, you're going to wear a shirt. Like we're not going to go to the store without a shirt on. Because you might have, what do you want to wear? My PJs. And you're like, well, kind of set myself up on that one.
Right.
So offer choices that you're okay with, and set a time limit on them too. It's like, because if you have a child who just refuses to, it's like, I'm not going to choose any. It's like, well, that's okay. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to choose. But if you don't want to choose in 2 minutes, I'll pick the red one. You let me know. And because the child at this age is so thirsty for, let me do it myself, most of the time they're going to choose on their own. And I'm going to put a little plug in really quick for sand timers. I love sand timers.
Oh, they're magical.
It's amazing.
They're magical.
But the children can see the sand, and if they're stressed or if they're angry, it helps them to come back to their frontal lobe of just being able to think and process. But also if you're like, hey, in 2 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and I'll choose for you. I don't mind. Choices are hard sometimes. And so then you can have the visual of the sand timer, because it's easy for us adults to say it's 1 minute, it's 5 minutes, but we forget, or the children don't have an understanding of what that is. So if we can keep that consistent as much as possible, that's a huge help. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. But go ahead and feel free to type in any other questions, and otherwise we might just keep rambling on.
We can do that.
We can do that. We're very good at it. Excuse me for just a second. I saw there was a message. Just want to make sure everybody's able to log on who wants to log on. And how about other parents? What have you found to help your children with self-discipline? We'd love to hear from you and what works at home. Do you have any other fun stories from growing up? I remember, here's a fun story. Well, you think of questions, is I must have been 4 or 5. And I remember I was definitely conscious of what I was doing. And I remember just throwing myself on the ground and having this huge tantrum. But internally, I was perfectly calm. I was like, I just want to see what's going to happen. And anyway, so my poor parents, they had their hands full. I was number 4, 5 daughters. So they did a great job. I think so. I think it turned out all right.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Here's another question. Top book recommendations to help incorporate Montessori at home for 3 to 6. That's a great question. So, and I love that because as parents, right, taking on that role of observers, you want to also study. You want to not just observe, but like feed your thoughts. One of the first books that comes to mind that's not one of Montessori's books specifically, but like a little bit more accessible and easier would be How to Raise an Amazing Child the Montessori Way. And that is by Tim Selden.
Yes.
And it's what I like about it is it's simple, it's straightforward, it has lots of pictures. And I know for me as a teacher, I can be very busy and it gets hard to read books. So I can't even imagine what it might be like for parents when you're running around and you've got a few in diapers or you have to make food and all of that. So I find that book to be really accessible and really easy to give some nice tips on like, hey, what could you do in the bathroom to help with independence? What could you do in the bedroom to help with getting dressed in the morning and things like that. So that would be a good book to get.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thought that come to mind?
I think the Angelina Polk-Lillard, she talks about Montessori for parents. It's a little bit more academic, and she goes into the principles of Montessori and how to do it at home as well. So
that's a
Montessori for parents. Yeah, we'll write these down.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And actually, if you can all put your email addresses in the chat, and then we'll make sure to send a follow-up email in the next week with just some links and resources as a follow-up.
Right.
And then if you guys are open to it, we'd love to put you all on the same email. This way you can chat with each other and continue that relationship as well, just going back to being a village. Another book, if you want to get a little bit more intellectual about Maria Montessori's work, another book I really like is, well, first of all, any of her books.
That's true.
They're all incredible. So any of her books are just wonderful. But I really like E.M. Standing, Maria Montessori, Her Life and Works. I've just really enjoyed reading it over and over again and just going through different chapters. I'm like, okay, I need to work on discipline or I need to learn more about what Montessori called deviations, when something is not going right within the child, and how deviations can be seen through bad behavior, what we would call bad behavior, tantrums or night terrors, or trying to think of other things, just anxiety or hitting. Often those come from deviations that are caused from a need not being met. So the book authors, I'll say that again. So the first one is Tim Selden for How to Raise an Amazing Child the Montessori Way. And then the other one I mentioned was E.M. Standing's Maria Montessori, Her Life and Works. And then you mentioned
Montessori for Parents by Angelina Lillard. Can't really talk.
Ooh, I love this next question. I already have the answer. Any suggestions for 4-year-old who takes forever to get ready, distracts herself, and doesn't stay focused? I'm going to say it's sand timers, but I would love to hear from other parents. What have you found that works well at home? Because at school there's a lot of peer pressure that kind of helps children.
Positive peer pressure.
Yes, positive peer pressure.
When we're in a classroom at Sophia Montessori, we have 25 children. Some are 3, some are 6, some are almost 6. So by the time you have a 4-year-old, they're surrounded by other people who are doing the routine, loving the routine, and want to do their best. So that kind of peer pressure is just, you want to be part of the best you can be. And you don't always have that at home. You just have that one little person. So our advice from school comes with that sort of our experience lens. But yeah, Pauline, I know you have insights into that.
Yeah, I think I really want to hear from other parents who've gone through that. But so I think sand timers can be a good solution. It's like, hey, when the sand timer's done, we're going to go. And you need to have this, and that. And then send timer goes off and those things aren't done. It's like, I'm sorry, it's time to go. You know, I've learned a lot from Love and Logic as well on how there are natural consequences and it's not something we're imposing, but we're giving everything we can. But in the end, it does need to come from the child. Visuals can be really helpful. For example, if you have, actually, Irene and I were joking about this in the mornings because I'm like, I feel like I always forget one thing. I'm like, I'll get in my car. I'm like, oh, I forgot my lunch, or I forgot, I figure out ways around it. But so finally, I wrote down my morning list of like, okay, these are all the things I need to do in the morning, because now it's not stuck in my head. It's on paper, and I can check it there. But for a child, having a visual like that might be really helpful, especially if they're distracted.
A visual calendar, like maybe simple line drawings. I say my prayers, I get dressed, I brush my teeth, I brush my hair, I eat my breakfast.
Yeah.
Whatever the next thing might be, go to school, wash
put on
dishes,
my shoes,
right?
You know, find those key things. Don't make it too long of a list because that could feel very overwhelming, but maybe like the top 5 things that your child needs help with. You could have like a little clothespin that they would put on where they're at, because then that adds that concreteness to it. So that would be another idea. But let's see. Okay, so here's from a parent. I'll go ahead and read it aloud. We just say she gets to do it herself, but if the time runs out, then we will do it for her. That's, yeah, again, there's just such a pull for, I want to do it myself. A tantrum follows usually, but because she wants to do it so desperately herself, it's a good incentive. We just got a visual chart for her morning and evening routine, so hopefully that'll help. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that response. And that is a natural consequence. It's like, you know, we're all in this together. This is our family, and we have to go to church or we have to go to school. And
yeah, and even within that, there's that balance too of like this kind of like you need to stick to the routine and move through usually comes up when things need to be accomplished. So mom and dad have to get somewhere and you don't have all the time in the world. So there's that set of expectations that can be talked through, visualized, etc. And then there's just the part of the day that, well, go play. Just go play. And so that's her dream time. That's her time to like just play, be yourself.
Yeah.
Sing songs and get dressed up and all her dress ups and all of that. But it's when the expectation that comes from the family and from mom and dad becomes present in however much time or however we say today we are going shopping. So the child knows that means I need to go through this routine at this time. And mom's going to let me know when I need to get started. Yeah. I think that's a pretty important thing to delineate.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And then also, just really quick before I move on to the next question, to the next comment is, I think it's really good to also remember to have that scientist mind and observation mind, because you're like, wait a second, what's missing? And it might be, oh, we need to do grace and courtesy on how to put on our shoes by ourselves. Or it might be, maybe there's another, role playing that we can practice tomorrow when it's not time, when it's not stressful. But it could also be like, maybe this is actually too hard for my child, or maybe I'm giving too many choices. So remembering to have that scientist mind within parenting, which doesn't necessarily come to mind, but it makes a huge difference. And then this is from Katie. The deadline of the stand timer really works for us. The parent doing it if the child doesn't do it in time. There's a small whine usually, but it's also a clear consequence. And it gives a time limit, because I think, thank you, Katie, I love that. It can be so easy to give choices and then it just could last forever. I mean, children have a lot of stamina. They have a strong will, which is a really, really good thing. Really good thing. So.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, like not to give clear expectations. That's why a visual chart is good for the child, but it's also good for the parent or the teacher in some cases, because there are times when I've seen this many, many times, and I catch myself doing it on occasion, where I start offering too many choices. Oh, yeah. Would you like to come inside now? Okay, do you want me to help you with your shoes? I can take your lunch for you. Okay, I'll take your snack bag too. And okay, I'll hang up. You want me to hang up your coat, or I can hang up your coat? Okay, now there's so many choices within that for a young child trying to navigate all of the choices and they only hear it as a conversation, it actually turns out to be quite stressful for them.
Yeah.
What is most comforting for an adult, I'm sure sometimes you've experienced this too, but what is most comforting for a child is I'm going to help you come inside the classroom or come inside the school. I'm just going to use my own life experiences. I'm going to help you come in. There's not a question of whether or not you're coming in. You're coming in. And that's okay. So, do you want to put on your shoes? You know, if you're going to be leaving the house to go do an errand or something, you know, if it's really a conversation and it's really a choice, and the child says, no, you are kind of stuck. So I think as adults, being very clear with how we interact with the child to say, we are putting on our shoes, I can help you, or you can do it yourself, is also important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had students, this was past years, another life, another school, where I could tell by the time the child got into the classroom, they were so overloaded with choices, they were exhausted. They couldn't fathom one more opportunity to decide. And everything was a choice for them. And it was very difficult for that sensitive temperament. They just needed to know what was white, what was black, what was for breakfast, and then move on to the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be done.
And something else from Katie is that's important to mention in all of this. So I'll go ahead and read what she wrote. I find we get frustrated when we feel like we have given a direction and the child isn't responding. But in that situation, we are often giving the direction request from afar. I love that. When the child is focused on something else, we are more effective when we get close to the child, speak softly and clearly, and ask for an acknowledgement. I absolutely love that. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that Montessori teachers have to learn. And
yeah, we do.
It's one of the big things in the classroom. When you have 25 kids, you can't just like be yelling across the room. So the kids love when we role play this. Yes. It's one of my favorite role plays to do. It's like, hey, Miss Irene, can you get me a book? And then the kids are all just laughing. So we talk about, we can't act like that in our classroom. That doesn't work. So we practice, putting the hand on the shoulder, and that is incredible to implement at home as well. A friend of mine, actually, who's in his 30s now, still does that because his mom implemented it as when he was a child. So just a fun fact. But and then just waiting for there to be that connection. So we practice like, oh, she's not ready for me until we make eye contact. It's like, hey, what's your favorite color?
Red.
Beautiful. So we'll practice those fun interactions with the kids to practice that. But I think that's very important. And I love that you brought that up, Katie, to have that with your children as well, because then from afar, they're completely somewhere else. And then it's just adding more noise, which can just get everybody's blood pressure up. And a little bit more from Katie, as you've been saying, the example of, would you like your water with ice or without? You will drink water, but you have a choice between two options. That has been so helpful to us. I'm so glad to hear that. But yeah, it's exactly right. It's like, you have to get cleaned. So would you like a bath or would you like a shower? Either way, you're going to get clean, but you have that choice, because the children are full human beings and they have preferences, and it's beautiful when we're able to respect them while offering them structure and boundaries as well as choices.
Yeah.
And
a sense of humor.
Oh, absolutely.
Goes a long way too.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's those grace and courtesy lessons.
Children
can
pick up on your own sense of humor, and I think your own frustration as well. And
so
if you bring a laugh and a smile to the situation,
sounds like the absorbent mind, Miss Irene.
then it's easier to get out of a power struggle, because those can come up with your children too. Well, they're determined this way and you're determined this way, but a power struggle they always win. Even if you feel like you won, they still win.
But I'm the adult. Right? Doesn't always work that way. No, it's just such a joy. And I think parenting, and I see it in teaching as well, is just one of the most humbling jobs, the most humbling honors, really, actually. Job isn't quite the right word, of just being able to, yeah, just to learn and grow with the child, and the children really pick up on that. All right, so go ahead if you have any other questions or comments or things you would like us to speak on. Oh, thinking back to discipline, I love it. How would you handle a situation in which the older sibling keeps stealing things from a little sibling? Ooh. And all forms of speaking or rationalizing isn't working. I struggle to think of natural consequences in a situation like that. Ooh, that's a good one. So, yeah, what do you do if you have one sibling, the older sibling taking things away from the younger sibling? I could talk so much about sharing, and goodness, I'll add a link about my thoughts on sharing, because I have a lot, a lot of thoughts. But yeah, as we don't have siblings, I think that, well, we have siblings within the classroom, but we don't have necessarily that exact situation. Some thoughts that come to mind would be, gosh, that's hard, especially if you've tried talking and reasoning, and that might be just something where you have a box and it has the older child's name on it and the younger child's name on it. It's like, this is what you may use, and this is what she or he may use. And until we're ready, for a little bit more, then we'll go from there. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that's like the most important thing to do, is to, again, within your family culture, establish that boundary of, like, when you're playing, we could play together. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
But practicing those words too. I actually have to do this somewhat on the playground, because in the classroom it's pretty structured, but on the playground it's free play. So someone might be playing with a ball or one of the little tractors, and someone else just takes it. So how do you help those children understand, like, this is John's ball. If you would like to play with the ball, you could go to John and say, John, please tell me when you're finished, because I really want to play with that ball.
Right.
And so that's what I do on the playground to establish, because if the taking is happening, which it does,
yeah,
I'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I see you're not ready to play with your friends in a way that keeps everyone happy. So I'm going to take the ball, and no one gets to have it.
Yeah.
And so the firm boundary, though, of, like,
yeah,
we both lose it. But also within a family context, I think it's important that if the older child or a child is just taking someone else's things, I think an observer, which is what we're trained to do, would recognize this child is asking for something. What is it? And so that child might actually need a lot of nurturing one-on-one attention outside of the context of taking, but maybe later in the day, snuggle up with a blanket, have that special one-on-one time, maybe something special that's a gift from mom and dad that they can hold for themselves. So they are asking for that recognition in some way.
Yeah,
so
I
just
love
use
that.
your intuition. I would say, like, this person needs a little bit more one-on-one. Not right now. They need to know the boundary, but a little bit later.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go in and just overdo it on the loving for them.
And two other thoughts on that before I read Katie's beautiful responses. Practice beforehand, right? Having those grace and courtesy lessons of, like, hey, I'm going to pretend that I'm Josh, your baby brother, and I'm going to take your toys. What are we going to do? And make it fun and laugh it off too. Just have that fun with that too. And then the other thing is, I want to just say how incredible parents are. I just want to plug that in there. Like, just
that's right. Yeah,
you guys are doing so much, and it's really, really beautiful what you do, and just that presence that you have with your children. So Katie, to follow up with that question, says, we definitely have the sharing problem at our house, but we work on taking turns. It's okay for the older child to say when they don't want to share right now, but they have to ask and receive a yes before they can take another child's toy. And that's very similar to what we do in the classroom. At the beginning of the school year, you'll see sometimes some children who don't necessarily know how to do that, but little by little, through reinforcement of, like, please ask first, and they can say, please let me know when you're finished, and things like that. Little by little, it really becomes less of a problem. And Katie also adds, I'm often amazed at how, if one child asks nicely, the other child is very willing to play together or give a turn. And it's very true. It's very true to see that difference. So I think we'll kind of pause on that question because there was another one I wanted to make sure I got to is, what do you recommend for memorization at this age, the absorbent mind? What sort of content and how do you do it? Today I realized our son knows a lengthy scripture passage from one of his books by heart. I want to seize that opportunity. How beautiful to recognize the power of the absorbent mind. So I think poems are wonderful. I would, go for poems with a lot of rhyming or poems that talk about everyday things, just life. Scripture passages are beautiful. The scripture of the Good Shepherd speaks so deeply to the 3 to 6 year old child. It's really incredible. And I think the best way to do it is just read a lot, or pick a poem or pick a scripture passage as a family that you're going to say every morning in the car or after dinner, as kind of the end of your meal, and just having that rich vocabulary, that rich language, because they're all about absorbing that. They're in that sensitive period for language. So yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Irene?
No, I think that it pretty much encompasses it, because children love the repetition anyway. So if you have, maybe there's scripture passages or different songs or things that you love or different books on tape, that dates me, I know, but that the children love hearing it over and over again, and it's actually kind of amazing how much they just retain. But,
speaking on repetition, so I'll put a little plug in, that it can be very hard for us adults to read the same book over and over and over again. So
when they have the book memorized already
and they want to hear it from you, there's nothing that's ever going to be better than that.
Yes.
So my recommendation is find books that you are willing and happy to read over and over again. There are many amazing books out there, but there are also incredible amounts of terrible books. Right. So just for your sake, and I'm sure you all already know this very well, but find those beautiful books. And just that bring in beauty, that bring in reality, that bring in truth, to the children in their lives. So yeah, go ahead and shoot any other questions. We're happy to stick around for a few more minutes. It's almost 6, but we'll chat for a little bit. But if another question pops up before then, we would be more than happy to answer and do our best. But it's just such a joy to be able to chat with you guys, even though it's not in person. I do miss that very, very much. Yeah. But it's just
hopefully someday soon.
Yes, please. It's time. We're made to live in community and in presence of each other. So.
And I think also we're looking forward to a time when you can be in the classroom and just observe. We could talk Montessori all day long, but sometimes you just have to see it working.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Montessori.
And then you're like, oh, that's what independence looks like. Or,
right.
That's how structured it is. And all of that. So it's kind of amazing. So.
And Katie and Johnson, you're very welcome. So thank you for yours. Thank you. And thank you also for the Trauber to just thank you for your kind words. And we love doing this as well. It's always more fun in person. My favorite is still last year when we had all the parents able to come into the classroom and we talked about, similar to this, about just the basics of Montessori. And they're like, here's how the Montessori work. Go for it. See if you can figure it out. So I really hope we can do that again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Britta, you're so welcome. And thank you all so much for coming. We will work on sending a follow-up email. Actually, you know what? If you guys just hang on for a second, I'm going to go ahead and type. Sorry, I'm going to get a little close, but I'm going to go ahead and type a few of the notes just to make sure you have them.
Make sure you put it on.
Oh, yep. Thank you.
The group response.
Oh, and actually, 2 quick things that come to mind is, Irene, do you want to talk to them about our gala that's going to come up?
Oh, yeah. So
it's still far away.
Yeah, we have a couple of parents who have volunteered to help organize it. That we're really appreciative. We're going to be talking to them again on Zoom tomorrow to get some more details on a timeline. But the gala is set for May 1st, which is a Saturday, I believe. It's a Friday or a Saturday. And these galas are actually pretty important for a couple of different reasons. They are what allow us to keep the school running throughout the year. So when COVID hit, like we were able to keep going, it still exists. But it also provides tuition support for families who need the tuition support. So we also use it to for teacher salaries to offset some of the costs that come with that. So it again, we plan for it to be online this year because it's kind of hard to plan on things being in person. So the committee decided to do it online, but again, May 1st. But if anybody would like to participate, we'll have more information about that. A lot of the work comes in just doing the auction items, gathering those auction items, reaching out to different organizations, asking for their donations, and of course, making it a fun experience is really important too. So, yeah.
Oh gosh, some really great questions coming up.
Oh, about the new location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I just shared the 3 titles of the books that we sent. I think it'll be a little bit easier than going for it through. She's not sure if the title is correct for literature.
Oh, I see. It might be Angelina.
No. The name of the book here. I might let you.
Montessori for Parents.
Yeah, it's not coming up. So the article I sent, I wrote a few years ago about how developmentally appropriate is sharing. I'd love for you guys to read it and let me know your thoughts on it. It may sound controversial. We'll have to see what you guys think. So we're gonna look for that, and then I think that might be easier than us sending a follow-up email, just because I'm not sure I have everyone's email addresses and everything. So hold on, I want to make sure. Favorite books. So being able to share some of the favorite kids books that we like to use that are beautiful, that draw on reality. I'm going to share with you a Montessori teacher's blog. And she is just wonderful. We got to meet her a few years ago. She came to observe our school. And so Cosmic Bookshelf is her website. I'll post that in just a second. And because she is Montessori, she has a deep understanding of the kinds of books to recommend. And actually it's 2 of them. So I highly recommend, oops, sorry, I shared that privately. I meant to share that to everyone. I highly recommend checking out Cosmic Bookshelf because you'll see a lot of just really beautiful books. I'm big on children's book illustrations. Had I not been a Montessori teacher, I might have wanted to go that route. But
still can.
I still can, and I just need to relearn how to draw because it's been a long time. Another question I really don't want to skip on is how much more do you need to raise to grow to a new location? Any luck in finding a place? There's so much that we are doing. So we have been looking at different places. We are meeting with our board very regularly at this point about how to fundraise and how to move forward, because this actually was very heartbreaking for us. Is we just had, we had to say no to 27 children for next year, and that is just not right. So we are definitely very actively looking for a bigger space that would be able to accommodate more children and just to be able to, to just keep on growing. So financially, I mean, we've looked at numbers and it could be in the millions, but that's not going to stop us. It's definitely in the millions.
But that's okay. That's okay.
So,
it's just money. Look what Mother Angelica was able to do.
Yeah, exactly. God has all the money. So
God has all of the money.
Hopefully this is something we can share with everyone very soon. So please keep it in prayers. We're entrusting it to Mother Angelica. She was crazy. She called herself a dodo for Christ, of doing the ridiculous so that God could work the miraculous. So keep that in your intentions and in your prayers. Yeah. We also, speaking of fundraising, we do have a little fundraiser going on, which I'm obsessed about right now. So Tiny Saints, I love Tiny Saints, and they're giving us 25% back. So every Tiny Saint is about $5. So every time you buy one Tiny Saint, we get $1.25, which is huge. So I already bought a lot of them. So my
Yeah.
family, everybody's getting Tiny Saints, or I'm keeping them all. I haven't decided, but yeah. So if you're able to go on there, that's a very easy way to support us, and all of that. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Things that come up. Have you found the Montessori one?
I
It might
have
be
it at
Montessori
home.
from the start.
Yeah, no, I have one at home, so I'll bring it in.
Okay. So
And,
we'll
yeah.
take a look in that. But any books by Angelina Polk-Lillard are just amazing. So
Or Paula Polk-Lillard.
or yep.
Angelina.
Family Business. The science behind the genius is incredible. And that's going to give you all the data of like why Montessori is amazing. It's really cool, and the research that goes behind it.
Yeah, she was the first one who took the Montessori approach and just turned it into PhD level data to show that it actually works in that way. You and I know it works, but how is a PhD person supposed to know it works? So
yeah,
they measured it. It was really beautiful.
Thank you all so much. My goodness.
Thank you.
We'll stick around another minute or two, and well, I'm gonna ask them a pretty straightforward question, but should we do a podcast? What are your guys' thought on that? We thought about it years ago and then never did anything, but yeah, let us know. So hold on to all of those. I just received another email address, so if you can send those in, that is really helpful. And we'll try to still follow up with you and send those links as well. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone. So, yep. Thank you for including me, and no problem. Laura, I'm so glad you were able to come. So you are so great. Thank you all so much. So yeah, we'll wait for you guys to head on out just in case you have any other questions that pop up.
Yeah, that sounds
We'll
good.
start gathering all of our links to make sure we pass that on to you. So thank you all so much for coming. Okay, another email address. Awesome. Keep it coming. And then Britta, I'm not sure if I have your email. So if you want to send that in, feel free to. Great evening. Stay safe and happy. Thank you all so much. Such great questions. All right. Okay. Oh, Britta, thank you so much. Perfect. I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure. Wonderful. So I'll work on that follow-up email, and don't hesitate to reach out to each other and just give each other tips and ideas. I think that's just the beauty of our community, and being able to reach out to, just to each other, and don't hesitate to reach out to us as well, of course. So there we go. All right. Well, I think that I have everybody's emails, so I'll make a little note, and we'll also be posting this on YouTube so you can watch it again or pass it on. But thank you all so much. We'll say bye for now.
Bye.